Ladies and gentlemen, come gather round, come gather round, come gather around. Woo! Today, we're going to be fabricating some bumper brackets for the back of my 61 Chevy pickup. I know you can buy them, and except the 60 to 62 have a wider frame and they're a little harder to find and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to make them because what the heck, why not? I'm using my homemade hydraulic press and my homemade press brake to fold these in to the angles that I think I want to use. Surprisingly, that design for a press brake only goes to 90 degrees. So instead of making a whole new tool, I'm going to heat it up with the flame persuader and just bend it to a steeper angle to match one that I mocked of what I think I wanted based on the bracket holes in the bumper that I bought. My truck came with a nasty step bumper that probably came from the dealer. It had attached to brackets. It had wraparound pieces that stuck onto the bumpers, and it was not pretty. This is kind of what it looks like. It's a whack of half-inch steel, half-inch angle iron, and a handle so I can pick it up and move it. Not a challenging tool to use at all, but certainly quite handy. So with these angle brackets made, I need to have little tabs welded onto the ends that can attach to the bolt holes in the bumper itself. So back to my ratty old 1,000-year-old hydraulic horizontal, starts with the same letter, horizontal bandsaw. I'll chop off 4 little pieces. I'm probably going to have to beat them with a hammer to make them fit the curve of the bumper. You can get some pretty fancy bumpers, and some guys get pretty creative with bumpers for the backs of their trucks. I wanted what looked kind of looked like I wanted what looked original, eh? So I ordered the correct looking bumper for a 61 Chevy half-ton step side pickup. This horizontal bandsaw has been, oh man, I think Noah used it to build the Ark 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It was pretty ratty. I did take it apart and re-bushed the pivots for it using bronze bushings and better fasteners, and it's a little more accurate than it used to be, but I don't really think of horizontal bandsaws as precision machines. Whoa, whoa, oh, feeling a little nauseous here, holy smokes. Woo, if you puked, leave a comment below. Belt sander to take all the sharp edges off. I wear gloves on these because it saves my skin. And then we're going to go over to the milling machine. This is a generic 6x26 mill. I think Grizzly sells something equivalent nowadays. Everybody has one. They're all a sticker game mill. It's a 6x26 knee mill. I'd love a bigger milling machine. I don't really have the use for a bigger milling machine, but I would love to have one. I'd like one that could do cylinder heads. Open for sponsorship. But this has done me for years. It is actually a 3-phase machine, and I'm running a VFD so I can change the frequency a bit. In this case, I just need to get some slotted holes for these brackets to work. Can't quite tell from my editing software if I've shaped those already by beating them in a vise or pressing them. I don't know. We're going to find out in a moment. So I'm drilling a hole through this, and I think this is where I discovered that I didn't like the cutting fluid that I was using. I'm using soluble oil in a squirt bottle. It's not actually WD-40. I think I may just switch to WD-40. The soluble oil is nice. It cuts nice, saves the cutter. However, I'm finding that the water just sort of lingers a bit and starts to corrode the milling machine table, and I wasn't happy with that. So I'm not going to do that anymore. You can see the covers over the slots in the milling machine. Those are just cutting board plastic that I've chopped up, and I've got a piece of 1/2-inch square that screws onto it to hold them in place. It just means a little easier cleanup at the end of your task. Always a good idea to unplug or lock out your machine before changing belts or cutters or any of that sort of stuff. Keeps your fingers from becoming acceleratedly removed. Drilled a hole just to make it easier to cut through all of this. And I think I'm using a 1/2-inch, could be a 9/16 milling cutter. And I had put a piece of cardboard at the end of the 4 pieces here. Now when you're drilling through a whole bunch of stuff at the same time, you can weld all 4 pieces together and it makes it convenient to easily put a hole through there, or you can clamp them. I'm using a piece of cardboard because not everything in the world is perfect. The steel should be, but this King brand vise is likely not perfect. So a bit of cardboard will absorb any irregular peculiarities between all the materials and help you clamp all of them reasonably equally. So drilling through it all, milling through it all, using the soluble oil, which I no longer want to use on my mill. And then we're going to cut some slots just by moving the mill table back and forth. I don't think I even have an idea how far to move it. I just think, yeah, it looks about right. And that's where they are. And since they're all being milled at the same time, they'll all look the same and nobody will know any different. Then I'm using a magnet on a stick to clean up all of the metal shavings. You can see how the soluble oil gets in there, and ugh, don't really like that. Always clean up your machine after using it there, boys and girls. Oh, and then somebody brought me a screamer and some Christmas tree ornaments. And then we're going to sandblast those brackets until I'm rudely interrupted by my son, who needed help in the backyard. Probably with a lawnmower. Now we got the brackets back. Welding them all together, I'm using a Lincoln 140. Probably 023 wire. Mixed gas. And you can see in the background there's a box for another MIG welder, which I tested a while back. And if that is the welder, I think it is. I believe I gave it to a student at the end of the year, this past year. Now these brackets are not expensive. Like, you can get them just about anywhere. But I'm cheap. And I can spend a lot of my time buying this kind of stuff. Not a whole lot to say here. Maybe we should get something planned. And a fair bit of time sandblasting. We got the new brackets all blasted, and I got the little corner ones for the front done. Need some epoxy primer, and we'll paint them black. Which reminds me, and since I'm here, and completely unrelated, when you're sandblasting with the sandblasting cabinet and you're holding that little piece and blasting it all, make sure the metal that you're blasting is touching the frame of the sandblasting cabinet and thus act as a ground. If you're just holding it in free air and blasting it, you're going to build up some static electricity, which electrocutes you through your nipples while you're leaning over this. And it can be a little shocking. Leave a comment down below if you've experienced this on your sandblasting cabinet. Leave another comment if you just ran out to try it. Delete your comment if you stayed out there a little longer than you should have. All right, back to work. So the brackets are epoxy primed, coated in PPG's Dell Fleet Black. Stuck into place with a whole bunch of grade 8 1/2-inch fasteners, which also hold the trailer hitch together. And we're putting the putting the bumper on. These are stainless carriage bolts, which I sandblasted to make them a little bit rough and then sprayed them white with everything that I sprayed white, so that because they're stainless, they're not going to rust terribly nasty. Nice thing about being a base truck is there's no chrome, so you know, if this thing gets pretty nasty, it's like a $10 can of Trimclad away from looking decent. One of the reasons that I made my own bumper bracket is to tuck the bumper in as close as I dare to the rest of the truck, but also to fit the trailer hitch, which is going to be hidden behind the license plate. That's as far as we got today. Thanks for watching. We got a whole bunch more coming, so take care, and we will see you again. Toodles.